All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Sorry about being late. Had a few technical difficulties per usual. Internet was working just fine up until about 7 o'clock when I got started. So welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight for this live virtual tour of our Discovering Home exhibit. My name is Pat Kane. I'm the Public Programs and Visitor Services Coordinator at the Museum of the Grand Prairie. Part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. Real quick before we get started, if you could let us know where you're from, where you're watching from tonight. Leave a comment down in the comment section so we can see where people are tuning in from. I am coming to you live from my home in Champaign as the museum is currently closed to the public until at least April 30th. So we're doing as much as we possibly can to reach you all at this time of everything basically being closed. So again, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Excuse me. Before we get started, also, if you could, to help spread the word and to make this reach as far and as wide as possible, I see we already have some people watching from Urbana, Champaign, and Virginia, but let's see if we can spread this around Central Illinois, the state of Illinois, the entire country, maybe even the world. Share this on your own Facebook page. Click that share button down below as well so you can watch with all of your Facebook friends from around the country and around the world. Also, before we get started, I did want to let you know about a few other things that we're doing at the museum at this time, some upcoming events, some other things we're doing, some digital content that we're pushing out to you all. So first, as we're closed, we're not able to see anybody walk through our front doors. We are doing a whole bunch of stuff on our social media pages. You all are here on our Facebook page tonight, but we also have an Instagram page and a Twitter page, as well as a brand new YouTube and Goodreads page where we're pumping out a whole bunch of content to you all, whether it's, our Collections Corner program where we take pieces from our collection, whether it's three-dimensional objects, photos, archival material, a whole bunch of things, and telling the stories of each one of those artifacts, each one of those pieces in our hashtag Collections Corner posts. We're pumping out a whole bunch of educational activities, as Governor J.B. Pritzker and many others around the country announced today that school will not be taking place for the rest of the academic year. There's a lot of resources out there that people are trying to grab onto during this time of e-learning and remote learning. And we're trying to help as much as we possibly can with those students, those parents, and those teachers, those educators at this time. So check out our social media pages for some educational activities that we're pumping out, whether it's story time, some hands-on activities, or some other things. Also doing virtual tours like the one we have tonight. We've also done a couple more. We've got a couple other virtual tour videos that are also shared and archived on our videos tab on our Facebook page. So after this, feel free to check those out if you haven't done so already. A few other events, virtual events coming up that we're involved with, we're putting on directly. We're starting a new event this coming Wednesday called Mornings with the Museum. It's going to be a casual conversation on Wednesday, April 22nd, where museum staff will stream a Zoom call, much like this one, but we'll have more museum staff members on the Zoom call at 10 a.m. from 10 to 10:30. We're going to have a casual conversation with each other and hopefully you too. So tune in on Wednesday, April 22nd from 10 to 10:30 a.m. Bring your coffee, bring your breakfast, tune in so you can learn more about what it is that we do at the museum. And then also we're looking for your questions. So send us in questions if you have questions for museum staff members. If you want to know, why is it that we do what we do? How did we get involved with the museum? What's our favorite piece from the museum's collection? What's our favorite historical topic to study? Any and all questions are welcome. We hope to have a good conversation with you all and answer as many questions as we possibly can, again, on Wednesday, April 22nd from 10 to 10:30 a.m., our new program, Mornings with the Museum. We're hoping to make that weekly, where we can have a new theme and a new topic each week for you all to tune in on. Another event that we are partnering with many other community organizations on is CU Sing a Song, Sing Along. My colleague Katie Snyder. I think she's out there watching tonight. Hey, Katie. She's been working with a whole bunch of community organizations on a bunch of initiatives, including this one. This one is partnering with ShambanaMoms.com, Cranard Center for the Performing Arts, Coop Adventure Play, and Urbana Arts and Culture Program to have a virtual sing-along of the beloved Sesame Street classic, Sing a Song. I'm not the best singer, so maybe some of you out there can sing a little bit better during that virtual sing-along. But that Sesame Street classic is going to happen on Saturday, April 25th from 4 to 4:30 p.m. And it's going to be led by Brandon T. Washington, who is a local musician and music educator at Unit 4 School District. So that virtual sing-along, hope that you can join us and many others in the community to sing that classic Sesame Street song. Again, April 25th, Saturday, April 25th from 4 to 4:30. Lastly, last event to promo, a program we call History on Tap, but this time it's going to be a virtual History on Tap, Women, Alcohol, and the Vote. Our Museum and Education Department Director, Barb Olschlager-Garvey, which I think she's also watching tonight too, she's going to put on this awesome and engaging talk to toast women's right to vote. We opened up a brand new exhibit this year titled How Long Must Women Wait? Women's Suffrage and Women's Rights in Champaign County. And this program is in our exhibit speaker series. And as I said, join us to toast to women getting the right to vote 100 years ago. And this program is going to focus on the relationship between the suffrage movement as well as the prohibition movement in the United States. These two things were happening pretty much at the same time, and there's some interesting relationships and interesting things going on related to women, alcohol, and the vote, as the title suggests. We originally were going to host this program at 25 O'Clock Brewery in Urbana, but unfortunately everything's closed right now, so we're going to do it in a virtual fashion. But we encourage you to still bring those local brews, and maybe even visit Tom at 25 O'Clock Brewery to fill up a growler with some 25 O'Clock beer beforehand, and have that on hand so you can watch this awesome talk put on by our director, Barb Garvey. So again, that is going to be on April 29th, Wednesday, April 29th at 7 o'clock here live on our Facebook page. One more thing, we're part of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, and the forest preserves are still open. Forest preserves are open for you to peruse, to walk, to get that essential exercise during this time where a whole bunch of other things are closed, but we're trying to do our best to keep those forest preserves open for you to explore. We do ask, though, that when you're out there, to maintain a safe social distance, stay at least 6 feet away from people, and wear those awesome masks that we're seeing all over the place too, so we can continue to keep these forest preserves open. Help us out there and do that while you're exploring the beautiful forest preserves in Champaign County. There's 6 of them: Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve in Mahomet, Riverbend Forest Preserve just outside of Mahomet, Sangamon River Forest Preserve close to Fisher, Middle Fork River Forest Preserve in the far northeastern part of the county, our largest forest preserve, also an international dark sky park, Homer Lake Forest Preserve just outside of Homer, and St. Joe within the county. There's a lake out there, obviously, and a whole bunch of other things to explore, some awesome trails. And then lastly, the Kickapoo Rail Trail is what we consider our 6th forest preserve, a multi-purpose trail for you cyclists out there, or even just runners, walkers, any way you want to ride that trail, feel free to do so. But again, maintain that safe social distance and wear those masks if you're around a whole bunch of people. All right, enough with all these promos. Let's see if we can actually get to this live virtual tour. So again, apologies for any delays. Had some technical difficulties a little bit earlier, but now we are back and ready to move forward with this virtual tour. One thing to keep in mind, if you do have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments below. As we're going along, I'll do my best. I'm monitoring the questions on my phone, separate from my computer, but there is about a 10 to 20 second delay between the comments that you may leave and me being able to see them. So if I don't answer your question immediately, just bear with me. It might be that delay or the fact that I'm trying to, think of an answer to that question. But please feel free to chime in the comment section. And if you haven't done so already, let us know where you're watching from tonight by leaving that in the comment section. Looks like we got a lot of people from Central Illinois and some folks from Virginia tonight as well too. And share it with the rest of your friends so we can watch with a whole bunch of other people on this beautiful Friday night. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen now, and we are going to start this live virtual tour. All right. Okay, so away we go here with this live virtual tour. So here we are outside of the Museum of the Grand Prairie, this beautiful building at Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve in Mahomet, Illinois. The Museum of the Grand Prairie opened as the early American museum in the year 1968. So this museum has been there for over 50 years. And for 50 years plus, this museum has been collecting, preserving, and interpreting the cultural and natural history of Champaign County and East Central Illinois. And as we walk inside, look at this beautiful place. We have the museum store. We have a whole bunch of merchandise, especially related to our new women's suffrage exhibit. So hopefully when we open, you'll be able to stop in and check out some of that merchandise and purchase it as well too. Look how big this building is. This awesome historic place is an artifact all in itself. We're walking past right now that brand new exhibit, our women's suffrage exhibit, which if you haven't done so already, check out that live virtual tour that we did last week of this special exhibit. You can even learn a little bit more about this sisterhood mural, that awesome artwork that you just saw there. As we're going around the main museum space, a lot of times as people walk in, if they've never been here before, they say, man, this place is way bigger than I thought it would be when I walked in the front door. And this museum goes on and on all over the place, upstairs, downstairs, to the left, to the right. We have a whole bunch of interactive and engaging exhibits for you to explore, including this one right here, the Grand Prairie Story, our trademark exhibit. We also did a virtual exhibit tour of that a couple weeks ago. So again, check that out on our Facebook page. We've got a special case exhibit right here too, called Called to Serve, remembering Champaign County and World War II, talking about D-Day and Champaign County's involvement in that major event in World War II. But this is an awesome place to work, an awesome place to visit. So please, once we open up, do come visit us if you haven't done so. Visit us regularly once all this social distancing is over. All right, so now we're going downstairs into our basement, into our new, less than a year old Discovering Home exhibit. This is a beautiful space. But before we get into that space, I wanted to show you what this place looked like before it was completely redone last year. This is the Discovery Room as it looked before. Some of you may recognize this if you visited us before, but it was complete with Zayrite's bedroom, the wigwam that you could dive inside in, a recreated log cabin, a bed, a whole bunch of interactive activities to try and recreate 19th century life in a very interactive way. But it was time for renovation. So as you can see here, we've got some staff members. There's George. We had to completely do a huge demolition in order to remove some of these parts and keep some of the favorites. Saw George and Barb and a volunteer, Alan, here as we're removing some of these parts of the Discovery Room and getting ready to put in a whole bunch of new stuff. There's Alan removing the burlap from the original wigwam construction. And as you can see, this place has been cleared out. We had to basically start from the bare bones and put in a whole bunch of new stuff while still keeping the favorites. It's a large open space. We put in some brand new lights up there to really bring some shine, some sunshine downstairs to this basement area, and even put in some new carpet down here, some blue carpet to represent the Sangamon River, the beautiful Sangamon River that is not too far from the museum. And it took a lot of work, a lot of staff time, a lot of volunteer time to create this beautiful exhibit that we just opened up last year. So we'll look at the main exhibit space as well as around the stairwell. There's a whole bunch to talk about when it comes to this exhibit known as Discovering Home. The whole idea of Discovering Home is, home is in that title. We're going to compare homes that Central Illinois residents, whether it's temporary or permanent residents, may have lived in, because different people have different homes, but homes oftentimes share some common traits, and that's what we're going to see tonight. And this exhibit is a huge thanks has to go out to Freedom Mom. Freedom Mom here, longtime education volunteer at the museum, who upon her passing left a large gift to the museum and helped a great deal in funding this exhibit that thousands of people into the future will enjoy, which we'll see a whole bunch of those interactive pieces over the course of this virtual tour. So we're starting over at our first home here. First home here, titled Calling a Region Home, the Wigwam, right behind here. So this wigwam is going to be a temporary home that those of the Anaka nation may have lived in, something similar to this. And as you can see, it's got these, it looks like a dome with these rounded saplings, these rounded pieces of wood or branches, creating this dome shape. And we've also got, these reed mats that are made out of reeds or small grassy plants to cover that dome shape, to not only keep out the rain, but also keep in the heat. These wigwams are what Anaka, also known by the French name as Illini, would live in here in central Illinois right around the wintertime. The Anaka were very moving people, nomadic people. They would move, close to 3-4 times each year, living in temporary homes such as this wigwam. As we can see here, this is smaller than what a normal wigwam would have looked like, but wigwams were only about 15 by 25 feet, not that large of a space to live in, because a lot of times Native Americans spent most of their days outside, whether it was hunting or gathering food, so they can prepare it over the fire here in these clay pots. We have this fire here not only to keep warm, but also, as I'm keeping warm there, heat up some of that food that Native Americans would go out and find, hunt, and gather here in central Illinois. So we're just inside the wigwam. Over here, we've got a couple illustrations of what these wigwams would have looked like in the summer. Anaka would have lived in long houses, a little bit bigger. It's got a little bit more of an oval shape, an oval domey shape. But in the wintertime, they would live in a smaller home like that wigwam. And here we have Dan Heichenberger, who is a scholar of the Illinois Confederacy, who actually in the year 2000 helped us build this wigwam. And you see him here, he's harvesting saplings from Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve in order to put this wigwam together, about 20 years ago. And, he's tying these poles together after he let them soak for a long period of time in order to create that dome shape, that wigwam shape that we just saw in the exhibit space there. And for a long time, it was behind walls that you couldn't really see the outside, but we wanted to bring that awesome wigwam construction outside of those walls so our visitors could see them. We've got this 18th century painting of the Anaka. A few Native American nations that belong to Anaka were the Cahokia, Peoria, Kaskaskia, and many more. But they're Central Illinois Native American nations that were in this area a long time ago, a couple hundred years ago, and are a part of our history, living here in what they called home at the time. So Native Americans hunted and trapped many animals and used the fur and hide for clothes and a number of other things. And here are 5 native animals the Native Americans may have trapped or hunted over the course of their time. So American bison, used to be very, very prominent in this area, but we don't see them anymore. But Native Americans would use their hide and their bones, their hide for clothing and their bones for tools when they were prominent mammals in this area. Next, we're looking at buckskin, skin of the white-tailed deer. After that, we get to the American beaver, the largest rodent in North America. And beaver furs were highly sought after because of the oil that's on beaver furs makes them almost waterproof. Could create some nice waterproof clothing or hats or anything like that to wear. Eastern cottontail, species of rabbit in this area, only known rabbit species in this area. Rabbit furs could be used to make hats and gloves most prominently in Native American times and early European settler times. And lastly, the muskrat, the cute muskrat here that was at one point one of the more trapped animals in central Illinois. So we got a hand on some of those furs. Let's get our hands on some of these plants here. these plants that we may be able to eat. See these tall stalks that look pretty familiar. Some other plants in there as well too. These are known as the three sisters. The three sisters being corn, or what Native Americans referred to as maize, beans, and squash. And these three plants actually help each other out as they grow near each other. Whether it's the corn or the beans that we're picking off here, or even down below, there's the squash down there. These three sisters, since they grew so well together in close proximity to each other, Native Americans named three of them together the three sisters, because they work so well together, just like sisters. Native Americans are known, and early European settlers are known for their using of animals, almost every single piece of the animal, using it for something, not going to let any of it go to waste. And here at this interactive piece, we're going to check out different pieces of the white-tailed deer, how Native Americans may have used them. The antlers could be cut and shaped into needles, scrapers, and other tools. Those antlers that white-tailed deer, male white-tailed deer, are known for. The brain on white-tailed deer, what could it be used for? Could be used to tan hides, because there's an oil in white-tailed deer brain that acts as a lubricant when tanning hides that works really, really well. Sinew, or those tendons or ligaments in white-tailed deer, could be stretched and dried for cordage and bowstrings, maybe some rope or part of a bow and arrow that could be used for hunting. The hide of white-tailed deer was highly sought after and tanned to use for clothing, and even blankets and bags and shoes. Could carry some stuff in some white-tailed deer bags. The carcass would be cut up for meat, venison, and then preserved, maybe some salted venison to eat long after it's been hunted. And the bone could be cut and shaped into needles, scrapers, and other tools, much like the antlers of the white-tailed deer. But Native Americans were known for not letting any piece of the deer go to waste. All right, moving on, we see this familiar looking tree. It looks so real, but it's down in the basement of the museum with those iconic maple leaves. This is a maple tree. It's not real, even though it looks really real. One thing I wanted to show you is the construction that went into these awesome trees. It's paper mache. It's around one of the standing posts in the bottom of, in the basement of the exhibit. And volunteers and staff members worked really, really hard in order to make these look like real trees. And I think they did an awesome job. We've got one maple tree looking at right here, as well as an apple tree just across from it. And we put in a maple tree because Native Americans were known for maple sugaring, or making maple syrup here in Central Illinois, because we have an awesome climate in order to make maple syrup in late February and early March. Maple syrup was introduced by Native Americans to European settlers as a way to not only sweeten food, but it was also a highly traded commodity in Central Illinois, throughout the Midwest, throughout the country as well, in early Native American European settler relations. Okay, so we're going into the next home. So we looked at, I'm just pausing just real quick here. The next home would be a log cabin. We looked at a wigwam for a good period of time, that Native Americans would have resided in, and now we're looking at a wigwam here, we're looking at a log cabin, a place, a home that Native Americans, early European settlers would have lived in, one type of home in the 19th century. And this is supposed to resemble a log cabin. Log cabin here, where we're going to look at some early European settler types of clothes too. They don't look too much like the clothes that we have today. Those who would live in log cabins, European settlers, dressed differently than we do today. And oftentimes they made their own clothes. They didn't have too many clothes. They made the best use of them that they could. Oftentimes clothes were used for protection from the sun, protection from the outdoors. So we see a lot of long sleeves, long pants, and some hats too, to protect ourselves from the hot sun, Illinois sun. And there's me with the hat on in the summertime. One thing I see here, Emily asked, do you guys have any known ways they would preserve the deer meat? And Barb, our director, even chimed in and said, thanks for doing that, Barb, thinking they dried it, kind of like jerky. I just want to go back a little bit here as I was answering that question. We're moving into the hearth of the log cabin. This is an awesome structure that our graphic designer who helped us with this exhibit, Jan Adams, if she's watching, shout out to you, Jan, helped create. It's using some material, and she used a hot knife in order to carve out these cobblestones to look like a real deal hearth. And I think it's just an awesome piece of artwork there to help resemble the hearth, a big piece of log cabins. Oftentimes hearths were created so they could easily be separated from the log cabin in the event of a fire. So, you know, your goods as well as your family, most importantly, could stay safe. And we put this hearth in there so our visitors, you know, visitors of all ages, kids could interact and cook a meal over the mock fire and set the table. You know, here in the 21st century, we don't often see, you know, too many families sitting around the table anymore, but this was often what took place in these 19th century log cabins from European settlers, where they would stay warm next to this open fire in the hearth. And the hearth would be used not just for heating, but for cooking, be very close to where each family would eat every night. So we encourage our visitors to set the table, create their own food, cook their own food, and sit around the table, much like 19th century European settlers would have done. Barb's adding even more information about a dried deer meat as well, too, as a way to preserve it. Here we've got a cradle with my finger over the camera above this image of spinning. Oftentimes fabrics, you know, wool was created. I had to create it for yourself. Maybe whether it's a blanket like the one that's covering these dolls, or even, you know, to help create the clothes for those dolls, or the clothes that are on you that are on your own that's on your own back. You would have to sew your own clothes, whether it's for you or the doll that would rock in this cradle. That's a popular piece for kids who visit the Discovering Home exhibit. We're looking out the window there at the farm at the Prairie. And then we move on to this sign, small spaces, talks about the cramped space that would be in a log cabin. And we're just going to pause just for a second there. But look, that cabin is not that big, but I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a small baby, 8 people outside of this log cabin that could be living inside one small log cabin all at once. And they would have to sleep there. And this space down in the Discovery Room, in the Discovering Home exhibit, is about 11 by 15 feet. And that's very similar to the actual size of what a log cabin would be in the 19th century, where these early settlers would reside. And we see them outside because they spent, you know, since this place is so small, they'd spend a good bulk of their day outdoors. And also, they would sleep in these rope beds, which is where the sleep tight phrase comes from, because sometimes the ropes would sag, the ropes in the bed would sag, and they'd have to be tightened by a wooden key, so, you know, you could sleep a little bit more comfortably. So that would be where the phrase sleep tight comes from, because you want to tighten up those ropes. And right behind this, there's a ladder that goes up to what would be the loft. The loft would be a place where, you know, you could try and cram in all of those family members in this small space. Moving on more to I think Marina asked who made the table, and I think it was one of our volunteers, Alan, which I see that Barb and Katie are helping me out with that too. Appreciate that help. Looking at some old-fashioned ways to do laundry. You know, no electric laundry machines, washing machines, and dryers out there. So they had to use a bunch of, you know, hand-operated things like a washboard, clothesline, in order to hang up some of your clothes. And I'm showing some of these pictures because we removed a whole bunch of the hands-on interactives while the museum's closed, in order to preserve those, keep the dust off of them. You know, while we're at this time of being closed. Look at this great picture. You know, we got a child at an apple orchard. And then we're going to move over to this apple tree. The other awesome, real, I mean, it's lifelike looking tree that is this apple tree. We chose to put an apple tree in there because there's another prominent Central Illinois tree. And as European settlers came over to North America, they brought apples and apple seeds with them. Because they were easy to grow, and often, you know, one of the first things that farmers would plant. You could keep apples cold for a long period of time, and for a good while, apple cider was actually more widely available than water, although it was alcoholic, because keeping alcoholic apple cider allowed it to stay fresh a little longer, keep a little bit longer. but apple cider was actually more widely available than water at one point. We got some more corn over here because, as it is now, even, corn is still king, but back in early European settler times in central Illinois, it was also king. You could harvest your corn, take it inside, put it in this basket like I'm doing here, and walking over to the hearth so you can prepare it for that evening meal each night for your family to sit around the table next to this open fire and this huge hearth that's a piece of the basement discovery room as well. Look at all this awesome food we have down in there. I think, maybe we should make a stew, or we should make a soup. What should we put in there? Well, let's put an apple in there. What else should we put in there? What about drumstick piece of chicken? Add a little flavor to it. Why not add some fish in there too? We got apple, chicken, drumstick, fish. I think there's cheese in there as well too. Let it simmer, stew. I think there's even a hot dog in there. Gonna stir it up, make us some nice soup or stew tonight for our family to sit around the table in our log cabin. But we encourage, all kinds of hands-on and interactive play for our visitors. So that's why we have this in there. So the open hearth, this big one could be used for multiple pans, multiple pots to cook all at once, much like I did just there. And then once it's all cooked and ready to go, you can bring it over to the dinner table to serve up to your family. We've got a whole bunch of awesome food in there that we're going to set the table for and serve up to our family here. So let's grab, we need something to drink, of course. Got our wet our whistle, grab a couple cups. Some plates, of course, these metal plates. We're gonna serve up some food. This is such a popular activity for kids that come and visit the Discovery Room. They will spend hours setting the table, serving food up to their brothers, sisters, friends, other relatives. Let's see, what are we gonna have for dinner? Let's put a burger on there, a banana, why not? Let's add some cheese to that burger. And let's throw in an orange. Do that too. Sit down at the table in our 19th century log cabin, eat some cheeseburger, some orange, and a banana. Look at all those food groups represented. Got to stay healthy out there, eat at home. Got to wet that whistle too. Could be coffee, could be tea, could be water. Let the imagination run wild there. Here at this table downstairs, made by Alan. Sounds like this table was made by Alan, one of our volunteers. Beautiful meal. Okay, so how would we? What would we eat? Well, one thing we could eat would be pig. And pig would be used for a whole bunch of other things, much like we talked about white-tailed deer being used, every piece of the deer being used by Native Americans. Pigs were widely available in central Illinois to European settlers, and they loved them because they could be used for a whole bunch of things. Pigs were known for eating scraps and eating almost anything and everything, so it was very easy to feed them. Didn't take too much to care for them. Pig fat could be used for lard, cooking fat, or also you could make some soap with some pig fat as well. So using multiple pieces of the pig in order to survive as an early European settler. The carcass, all types of the pig could be smoked, salted, preserved, and cooked for food, whether it's bacon, salted pork, pork chops, whatever. There's a whole bunch of pieces of the pig that you could use, even still today. Manure, what comes out of the back end, great for fertilizing crops you could grow, whether it's corn that was king in the 19th century and still is king. Intestines even were used in order to make sausages. Those intestines would be used as sausage casing, not letting, any piece of the pig go to waste. They provided a lot of things that settlers needed, and they were very, very handy to have around. How'd you collect the water? Well, one way could be using this yoke. Kids would, strap this yoke on their backs, much like this boy pictured there, and run down to a stream or a creek or a river in order to fetch the water. But this is not light stuff. Each one of those buckets could probably hold about 2 gallons of water, and that weighs about 16 pounds on each side, including the weight of the buckets and the yoke. So as a small child, you're carrying 35, 40 pounds to and from, maybe a mile and a half walk down to the on your back. Talking about some hard work. I think we take running water for granted here in the 21st century, but I know for certain they didn't back then, because it was hard work just to go and get it, and you wouldn't let anything go to waste. So imagine carrying that on your back as a young child. Even as an adult, carrying 40 pounds on my back for about a mile, that doesn't sound like too much fun to me, but you did what you had to do, you know, got to do what you got to do to survive. So put that yoke on sometime if you're ever down in the discovery room. Denise said that this is one of the favorite spots for her and her kids to come, and has been for a long time. Thanks for saying that, Denise. Appreciate it. Hopefully this place will be opened up soon so you and your kids can come back and enjoy it. So home is where the hearth is. Hearths, for a long time were the centers of homes. They may be the center of your home if you have an older home, but oftentimes we see in living rooms that, in the 21st century, at the center of our homes is what, like a TV or something like that. But the hearth or the fireplace could be used as a center of home, center of the living space. And, one way you can keep yourself entertained is talking to your family, or also, play with some toys if you were a kid in the 19th century, whether they're, these early settler toys like this Jacob's ladder that we see here, which is an awesome, awesome toy. It's almost like an optical illusion, but it reminds me a lot of fidget spinners from, today's day and age, but, just a little bit different, that vibrating feeling that it has when it flows down each one of those ribbons. And even the cup and ball is another popular old-fashioned toy and game that we have here. Let's see if I can get it in the cup. I will let you know that I'm right-handed. I'm using my left hand here because in the right hand I have the camera. So, it's not my best, but I give it a shot. Can I do it? What is that, my 5th time, 6th time? I keep hitting the rim. No luck. But that's one way to keep yourself entertained. No batteries required with a cup and ball. But Native Americans played with games and toys, also. Early European settlers weren't the first people to think of toys and games. We saw that cup and pin game that we'll get to in a few moments. But, there's some awesome toys and games that Native Americans have, whether it's some dice games that we have in these baskets, or the cup and pin game, as I mentioned, which is very similar to the cup and ball that I was just playing with. But these are some awesome games to play with. Check these out online while you're at home. See if you can make some of these even at home, maybe with just some construction tools like these Native Americans did. Let's pull out that cup and pin and try that. But it's very similar to the cup and ball. With the cup and ball, you're trying to put a wooden ball into a wooden cup. This cup and pin is made, that's a deer scapula or a shoulder bone. And then we have a sharpened, probably a rib bone that we're going to try and stick that pointy end into the hole in the middle of the deer scapula. It's pretty similar to the cup and ball. And let's see if I can get this one. What is that? My 2nd try. I'm getting close. I keep hitting the bone. Again, I'm right-handed, trying this with my left hand. I'm getting close. Let's see if I can get it on there. Look at that. I got it. Left-handed with a camera in the other hand. So that's one way you could pass the time, as Native Americans did, whether it was Native American kids or, Native Americans of all ages, the cup and pin. Other thing we have here is conversation cards, sitting around the table at home, maybe close to the fireplace or the hearth, starting up some conversation. So let's see if we can spark some conversation. See if you can answer some of these questions that we have here. I'll answer some of these questions too on these conversation cards. Good way to spark up some talk here in our comment section. So chime in with me so I'm not just talking to myself. So first one is we pull out this conversation card. Name 3 foods you would never eat. Mushrooms, black olives. I'm not a big fan of those on pizza or anything else. That's just 2 though. What is your idea of an ideal day? Probably spending it with my family outside, about 60, 70 degrees. If you had a time machine for a day, what would you do with it? I'd probably go back to my wedding day, best day of my life. Happened right there at Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve too. If I had a time machine, I would go back to that day. Coming up on the 1-year anniversary too, should probably do something about that. Anyways, so here we are in the main space of the Discovering Home exhibit. Got to push in my chair. I got to take care of the place. Got to clean up after myself. But comparing these two home spaces, wigwam and the log cabin. A lot of, you may notice at first differences between those homes, but I think it's really cool to see all of the similarities between those homes. They both had heating spaces. They both relied heavily on some local animals. They weren't that large. The games were even similar. The food that they ate was similar as well too. I think we all can notice how similar we are to each other more than just always pointing out the differences every time. All right, so we're going to head out of the main space here. We talked about homes. Let's move on to around the stairwell, where we're going to talk about, getting home and staying in touch. How did people get to and from their homes in Central Illinois throughout our local history? And also, how did they stay in touch with each other? We're going to look at a few things related to that in a few moments. Here's this awesome photo of the Sangamon River not too far from the museum at Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve. And we have this dugout canoe, this awesome vehicle to travel that Native Americans, may have used something similar to that. Here we have a dugout canoe. This photo was taken, of a Native American in the northwestern United States having a very long dugout canoe. Here's an image from the Cheeseboro collection of our Blacksmithing on the Prairie exhibit, the family that is all at the center of that exhibit. And our dugout canoe. Native Americans would take trees and hollow them out and spend hours and hours, hollowing them out and setting them on fire in order to make these dugout canoes. And our construction staff, here's Clint from Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve or Champaign County Forest Preserve District construction staff, and they helped us make this canoe. They used similar techniques to what Native Americans would have used in order to make this canoe, using an axe to dig it out, setting it on fire to seal it up. And this canoe, is much shorter than dugout canoes would have been. Sometimes they would be close to 20 feet long, these dugout canoes would be. But this one, we can only fit it in a small space here down in the discovery room. But we encourage our patrons and our visitors to get in, stick that oar in the water and paddle along, whether it's on the Sangamon River or elsewhere, much like Native Americans would have used to travel across Central Illinois. Hey, Sandy Kennedy's watching. I used to teach with her at Riverton. Hey, Sandy, thanks for watching. But there's the dugout canoe in the Sangamon River. Man, it'd be cool to be on the Sangamon River right now, wouldn't it? Kayaking, canoeing. Okay, what's another way to get around? The horse, very important to early travel, early European settlers in Central Illinois. Here we have Wendell and Max up on a horse. At one point in 1910, Champaign County had 30,000 horses and only around 2,000 cars. I wonder what those numbers are today. So here's Max, much like Wendell and Max pictured there. Here's Max that our graphic designer, our graphic artist, Jan and Alan worked together to put this thing together. It was painted by Jan. Alan helped with the construction of it. And it was also thanks to some other staff and volunteers to create this horse. And somehow Max must have got loose, and now he's in the Sangamon River over where the dugout canoe is. Got to keep him tied up there. But let's hop on Max and travel around like we would if we were early European settlers. Maybe this horse, we could ride on the back of it. Maybe it could be attached to a buggy, could be attached to a sleigh. Some other things that we'll see further in this exhibit. All right, so let's hop off of Max here. Stay good, Max. Hopefully he doesn't get in the Sangamon River again. Here's an image of Buffalo Trace Prairie. And as we can see there, it looks like some animals have even made a pathway to get to and from their homes there. Trails, these roads could be used not only by animals, but before, we had automobiles and other things, and horses, walking was, of course, a main way to transport yourself to and from. So this image to the left here, after we look at this photo of this Illinois road from about 1900, dirt road there, not paved, could get very muddy in the rain. This is one of my favorite pieces from the whole exhibit downstairs. The time it takes to get there. It talks about how long it would take by different modes of transportation to get from Champaign to Mahomet. It takes me 14 minutes to get from my front door in Champaign to the museum to work each morning. But imagine walking 3 hours and 40 minutes, or canoeing 2 hours and 45 minutes, or even by buggy an hour and 22 minutes. If I would have to leave much, much earlier each morning in order to get to work. Another way to get to and from home is, by horse and buggy. This buggy here is a John Deere Reliance buggy that was donated to the museum. This was here before we renovated. It's permanent home. This buggy isn't going anywhere. It's a pretty large artifact, but this buggy has, those those great big wheels and tires. Here's an advertisement for the John Deere Reliance buggy, a way to travel to and fro. Got an image down there. Looks like we've only got one person, maybe a woman in there, moving that horse in there. Hey, there's a horse right there. Maybe that's Max, Max's brother, Max's sister. I don't know. Here's a big wagon wheel. Look at those big spokes, a shoe that could go, a drag shoe that could go on one of those wheels to help these horse-drawn vehicles. This is a beautiful artifact, though. One of the larger artifacts that we have in the museum's collection. That's a strong bucket. Here we have a grease bucket because sometimes these wheels would need to be greased up, so they can move a little bit easier. They'd be hung underneath these buggies in order, to make travel a little bit easier on those horses moving those wheels. All right, so moving to other parts. There's Abe. He's a little lonely right now as the museum's closed. Hey, Abe, but he's hanging in there, much like all of us are. Here we have a sleigh. This Albany cutter sleigh. It's got some later pinstriping on it that's not original, but this Albany cutter sleigh from the late 19th century is a way to get, to and fro. If there's snow on the ground, it'd be a lot easier to travel with a sleigh as opposed to a buggy if there was snow on the ground here in Central Illinois, because as you know, if you live in Central Illinois, just like we do, we get all 4 seasons. And here we have the inside of the sleigh, a blanket to keep warm, as well as a foot warmer down there. You can put some hot things in there in order to keep your feet warm when you're traveling in the wintertime in Central Illinois by way of horse and sleigh. There's ladies in a sleigh there and some snow time. That's an awesome photo. I love these old time photos in the exhibit space. And then also, what would a sleigh be without sleigh bells? Sleigh bells were used and attached to sleighs as a way mostly to warn other folks if you're traveling to and fro that you can hear someone coming. Much like we have sirens on police cars and fire engines now, these sleigh bells, if you heard some sleigh bells, you would know that there's somebody else coming on a road. There's that sound that we associate a lot with the holidays now, but it was used, had a practical reason as well. So you can warn people that you're coming so people could hear you so you wouldn't run into each other. Of course, I had to talk about the automobile, the Tin Lizzie, which would completely change human history, the invention and the prevalence of the car and the automobile. Look at all these different types of transportation in that photo. There was a horse, a boy on a bike, and some cars. Here we have some license plates from the collection, different ones. This top one up there, you'll notice this license plate at the top is a little bit different from the other ones. The numbers are actually cut out there on the license plate so air can flow through them. This was done on purpose so it could cool the engine, so the engine wouldn't overheat. That was actually, there was actually a reason why these letters would be cut out, so you could have air pass through the front of the vehicle in order to cool down the engine. And then we have, the evolution of the license plate over the course of time. Some things change. We saw the silhouette of Illinois on one of those early license plates. Land of Lincoln is on there, and also have an orange and blue one, to commemorate the University of Illinois. Right now in Illinois, 7 million registered cars, and 109,000 of them are in Champaign County. Another major mode of transportation, revolutionary one, the railroad. Before cars, railroads changed human history as well. Riding on train, not as prevalent as they used to be, but still, a big piece of 21st century living as well. We've got some kids on a train there. Let's see if we can play, in a few moments, we're going to come back to that board, some train trivia. This is a beautiful image from the Library of Congress, so colorful, so beautiful. A lot of things happening in this image. This would be an awesome image to use in a classroom to dissect all the pieces, all the parts of it as well. But, as we zoom in here, this is for the Illinois Central Railroad. Look at all that activity, all that railroad activity there in Central Illinois, all those train tracks moving to and fro Central Illinois. All right, so lift the panels to learn more about railroads in Champaign County. Let's play some trivia, see if you can answer these questions. We got 6 questions. First question, can you guess how many miles of railroad Illinois had in 1920? Somebody guess in the comments. Somebody give it a guess. How many miles of railroad Illinois had in 1920? What do we think? 3, 2, 1. How many miles of railroad In 1920, Illinois had about 12,000 miles of railroad, the most it would ever have. Illinois only has around 7,000 miles of railroad today. And we saw an image of a locomotive on the Illinois Central Railroad there. Do you know how much it cost to ride a train in 1900? So somebody take a guess in the comments. I'll give you 10 seconds. How much do you think it would cost to ride a train in 1900? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Maureen said 10 cents. How much would it cost to ride a train in 1900? $1, Denise said. The cost of a train ticket, depending on where you wanted to go, is about 2 cents per mile. 2 cents per mile. A ticket from Champaign to Chicago would cost about $3. $3. So 2 cents per mile. So I guess all of us who put an answer 10 cents, Maureen, you could get 5 miles with 10 cents. Marina said $1. Marina could get 50 miles with $1. How many railroad jobs can you think of? Name some railroad jobs in the comments. What does it take to make a train go? How many railroad jobs can you think of? I'll give you 10 seconds. Write them in the comments. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shovel coal, Maureen said. Yeah, I gotta have somebody shovel coal. A conductor, Denise said. Robert chimed in. Lori chimed in with the train tickets too. Thanks for doing that. Continue to chime in, everybody. Shovel coal, conductor, 2 of them I see. Water, Robert said. Gotta have some water for the train. Maybe if it's a steam locomotive. Engineer, Barb said. Let's see. What about engineer, conductor, station agent, telegraph operator, mechanic, train car builder, track layer, and many more? That photo had 2 mechanics up there. Robert said baggage. Engineer, brakeman, Lori said. A ticket taker, Marina said. Those are all great jobs that you would absolutely need. What about how many people do you think it would take to run a steam locomotive? This steam locomotive we have here with the steam billowing out of the stack there in the front of the locomotive. And if you look on the roof over there on the left, what does it say? Champaign. That's pretty cool. This is an early photo of a steam locomotive in Champaign County. So how many people do you think it takes to run a steam locomotive? Let's keep those guesses coming in the comments. You all are doing awesome. I'll give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. Denise says 5, 7, 6. Maureen says 5, 5, 4, 3, 2. Marina says 3, 1. Keep those guesses coming. Katie says 20. How many people do you think it takes to run a steam locomotive? And the answer is the engineer stops, starts, and controls the speed of the locomotive. The fireman controls the fire and the firebox, water in the boiler, and steam pressure. So this one says 2. Robert said 2. He got it right here. I guess you could use more, but according to this one, it says 2. You could get by with just 2 people running that big old vehicle, that steam locomotive, just 2 people. Okay, next question. Where did the Kankakee and Urban Traction Company stop? So this is a railroad that was in central Illinois, a track that was in central Illinois. Where do you think this railway stopped? It looks like it's an electrical train. We can see above, there seems to be some sort of electrical line above there. So name some towns, some Illinois towns that you think this Kankakee and Urban Traction Company stopped. Some central Illinois towns. What do you think? Maybe that name could give you a big hint. Maybe that helps. Maureen says Kankakee. Denise says New Orleans. Maybe it stretched all the way down to New Orleans. Katie says Urbana. 3, 2, 1. Where did the Kankakee and Urban Traction Company stop? So stops on the Kankakee and Urban Traction Company line in central Illinois included Urbana, Rantoul, Ludlow, Sharps Crossing, Thomasboro, and Paxton. The KUT actually never stopped in Kankakee. Probably could have stopped at some of those other central Illinois towns that you all were investigating. Check it out. See if you know. Look up the Kankakee and Urban Traction Company after this virtual tour. So what about how many kinds of train cars are there? Looks like we got some stuff going on in this train car here. In the comments, name different types of train cars. What types of train cars can you name? I'll give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Maureen says 5. Denise says 6. What kind of train cars? What will be the names of those? Sleeper car, Maureen says. Food car, Marina says. 4, 3, dining, Maureen says. 2, 1. Lori says sleeper. Caboose, Denise says. Engine, coal. Cafe, Katie says. Types of train cars. What about the dining car, sleeping car, baggage car, freight car, refrigerator car, tank car, livestock car, flat car, grain car, caboose, and many more? That photo is the inside of a standard passenger car. Looks a lot like a bus, like we see in buses today. Barb said club. Robert said mail and baggage too. Okay, so moving on from transportation, what about how you can communicate from home? What about the phone, the telephone, a huge thing that is a part of our lives today, cell phones, but telephones have been around for a long, long time, first becoming available in the latter part of the 19th century of the 1800s. And here we have this awesome magneto switchboard. Look at all of those lines coming out from that switchboard that would need to be moved and placed by a switchboard operator that would use that headset and this talking piece to talk into, much like this switchboard operator pictured here would use, and would move those lines and those cables from hole to hole in order to connect you with your call. You would be the operator and you would speak with these switchboard operators in order to get a call placed. And this is an awesome, awesome artifact within the museum's collection, telling the story of telephones in central Illinois. We don't have switchboard operators now. It's a lot different with cell phones. Here's a two-box telephone as well too. The top box would hold a generator, a magneto, and then the bottom box would hold a battery in order to help make these phones run. And they could also hold some other things as well too. But you have a talking piece and a piece that you can also put up to your ear, an earpiece as well. But the telephone had to communicate with home some way. And this actually is another hugely popular piece, is this rotary phone here. Some of you may still have rotary phones in your homes, where you can remember a time when you had a rotary phone, but if you still have a landline, but had to spin the dial here. And this is hugely popular with kids downstairs. You can hear that rotary sound. 5, 6, 2, 6, 1, 2. That's a museum's phone number. It's a rotary phone from the museum, dialed museum number there. But kids actually at one point stood in line. Look at this. Kids stood in line to play with this rotary phone. They couldn't get enough of it. And an interesting thing, when asking these kids or asking other kids is, dial your home phone number. A lot of times, people don't know phone numbers. You don't memorize phone numbers anymore, because I just go into my cell phone now, click somebody's name, click my wife's name, and it automatically calls her for me. I don't have to dial the number anymore. We don't have to memorize phone numbers. So oftentimes kids don't even know how to use a rotary phone, let alone know their own phone number. How the times have changed. Another way to communicate from home is the written word. Send letters through the mail. And here we have our post office. And before, those post USPS trucks that we see everywhere now, mail would be delivered by horse and buggy as well too, with the early mail service from the United States Postal Service. And here's our mailbox. And this mailbox is pretty cool, because if we look at these names, these are all names from, other parts of the museum or people, in the museum's history. Freedom Mum, William Basehart, Nina Cheeseborough from the blacksmith exhibit, A.G. Little. We have a collection of his journals as a farmer in Central Illinois. B.F. Harris is in the Lincoln exhibit. H.I. Gelvin, first executive director of the 4th Reserve District. Zay Wright, notable piece of the Discovery Room. Esther Tusher Harriet Jane, Louise Carter. We also have these color coded to help sort the mail for those who may have a hard time reading or may have a hard time with the or are still learning the English language. Frank Yarr, Pete Cook, Frank Ernest, and William Redhead, the founding collection of the Museum of the Grand Prairie, what was the Early American Museum. And here's a postcard that was addressed to Ms. Louise Carter. These are using postcards, recreated postcards from people throughout the museum's history or actual postcards from our collection. This is a pretty cool postcard. I think maybe, was she being asked out on a date? No, Carter. I also have some packages. This package looks like you can put it in the green slot for Frank Ernest. Deliver that package to him. This one could go in the gold slot for Harriet Jane. That one's addressed to H.I. Galvin. Put that in his box. Make sure that's going to the right spot, okay? Going to H.I. Galvin's box. Got to make sure we put this in Harriet Jane's box, in the gold box there. Got a postcard for Frank Yarr of Yarr's Hardware and Grocery Store that was in downtown Mahomet. This looks like a Valentine. Look at that old Valentine from the collection, museum's collection as well. We've got a lot of postcards, museum's collection, that are actually pretty cool to look at. This is an interesting postcard. This one's made out to B.F. Harris of Mahomet. And it says on there, "Dear Ben, we are getting settled here in Washington, D.C. It sure is different than Illinois. Would love to have you visit soon. Signed, somebody named A. Lincoln." Abe Lincoln, B.F. Harris, good friends. Postcard right there. Fictional postcard sent to Abe Lincoln's friend. Let's make sure we put that in B.F. Harris's mailbox. There we go. And there we go. We just sorted some of the mail. We just acted like an old-fashioned letter carrier, post office worker. Okay, last piece we're going to look at for the virtual tour tonight is the telegraph key. Marina, we still use P.O. boxes in Seymour. Zay Wright was Frank Yarr's son, Barb says too. The telegraph here, way to communicate using dits and das, taps on this telegraph key that we'll see in a few moments, but it's a way to communicate. But these messages had to be very, very short, oftentimes somewhere around 10 words or so, and words cost about 3 cents per, or telegrams that cost about 3 cents per word. Here we have a Western Union telegram, says, we'll leave for home Wednesday morning. Had to keep it short and sweet, kind of like text messages. We have to keep those short and sweet. Sometimes they can get pretty long too, but here's something we could do. We could try and tap out codes in Morse code using our telegraph key. And we've got a key down there for all the letters and numbers that we could use in order to tap out some stuff. And we could type in home. The short sounds, the short taps are known as dits. The longer lines or dashes are known as das. So let's see if we can type out home. I tried my best to type out home. Maybe that one was home. I can't remember. But that's the telegraph key. And one thing you can do too is you can, try and figure out how to type in your name using Morse code by using those interactive sheets that we have. Okay, so we looked inside the main Discovering Home space, around the stairwell, and that is this exhibit space. That's the end of this virtual tour. So I hope you're able to, learn a little bit, have a little fun tonight in this virtual tour. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties that we had getting started, but, we eventually got it going here. But, one thing to take home from this, as I mentioned a little earlier, we compared what seems like two very different homes. But I think the more and more we think about it, we can look at that log cabin and that wigwam to identify that those homes are pretty similar, and that we all share some similarities. We may have a lot more in common with each other than those differences that we may seem to highlight so much. Again, thanks for watching. Tune in for some more virtual tours in the future. Hope you enjoyed yourselves tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for leaving all the comments and the questions. And playing trivia with me as well too. Thanks for tuning in, Barb, Marina, Maureen. Says she's never been out there, but will definitely be coming by now. Well, thank you so much. Katie, thanks. My office mate, maybe someday we'll share an office again. Eileen, thanks for the kind words. Thanks for tuning in. Barb, thanks for Barb and Katie. Thanks for helping answer these questions. Denise, thanks for tuning in. Can't wait to reopen. We can't either. Lori, thanks for tuning in as well too. Soon we'll be open soon, and hope to see all of your bright and shining faces there in the near future. But until we meet again, my name's Pat. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.